Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff Mosher, Adam Caplan. No, we don't have a game just from 24 hours ago to talk about. We've got a game from last week, but it was a huge game, a huge win, Adam, for the Philadelphia Eagles as they take command early. No pun intended, take command of the NFC East. They get themselves a game and a half lead up on the Washington Commanders by beating the Commanders 26-18 in what really was a strange game. I mean, a weird first half. Eagles couldn't get much going. Commanders got something going early, and then they couldn't get much going. Then the Eagles had this huge third quarter, and then Washington showed you a little fight at the end. They got into the end zone, and they made the score a little closer than the game appeared. But I do think it sets up for another sort of heavyweight fight, if you will. I don't know if I'm ready to call Washington a heavyweight yet, but they certainly showed you that they've got something about them. And in about 4 or 5 weeks, when these teams meet again, should be very interesting in Washington.
No,
Landover.
they're an above average, a good team. Defense is pretty good. No question about that. The numbers and tape showed that leading up to the game. The quarterback had been playing well. They got Brian Robinson back. After a slow start, we're kind of head scratching what's going on. They took over, but the defense is just, it's one of these things you just can't believe it's happening based on what we saw in training camp. We weren't really sure. It's like when I gave him a 11-6 record, we had to turn in our picks for the season. I'm like, well, the roster's pretty good. We'll see about the defense. Don't know. See if Hurts could bounce back. Could he get close to the 22 season? We know Barkley's a good player. How good could he be? Oh boy. We'll get into that. We've got some interesting stuff there. You kind of knew about the guys who were good. You knew it would be a good offensive line, but we don't even talk about the offensive line enough. I think it's even better than we thought. The coaching is way better than it was last season, particularly on defense, and offensively they've got some things solidified. So there's a lot of good going on, and we're going to get into a lot of the good as this show goes along here.
Yeah, in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about the offensive trend that we're noticing. I picked up on a defensive concept that I wanted to, share with you about what Vic Fangio is doing that I think is different and interesting. So we'll talk about that. Obviously, get into an injury that could be of concern going forward. We'll talk about that, and then we'll also, as this is sort of like the mini bye week, as people like to talk about, we'll get into the offensive defense, certain players and their expectations, if they're meeting them, not meeting them, and then next week we'll be back to normal. It'll be preparation for what should be a very interesting game against the Rams out in LA at SoFi Stadium. Our own Andrew DeCecco is supposed to make that trip, so he'll be covering that game live from, is it, what town, where in Los Angeles is it? You've been there, right?
I it's it,
Inglewood? No.
it's near LAX, I think, because I know the
Okay.
Chargers are near LAX and El Segundo. I was at the training facility. No, I passed by it, but I don't. Might be in Irvine. I don't remember. I know
They call it
it's
Hollywood Park in Inglewood. It's a suburb of
oh
Inglewood.
oh it is in
So,
Inglewood. Yeah, which would yeah okay. It is in Inglewood. Okay, I
yeah.
got it wrong. It looks like it's SoFi is an interesting stadium. People love it. The climate is great. It's certainly weird. It's just weird that the Chargers and Rams share the same stadium. It's something I never thought I'd see there. Look, it's one thing for the Jets and Giants to do it, but the Chargers always wanted their own place. They couldn't get it. They moved from San Diego, unfortunately.
Hmm.
My favorite Super Bowl was the San Diego one. The game was terrible, but the week was incredible. But unfortunately,
Which
the old
game was
Jack,
that? I forgot. I can't remember.
that was the '02 Super Bowl. That was the Raiders Bucks.
Oh gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was terrible, but
Yeah.
but the week was awesome. Down the gas lamp, all the parties were down there if you're from that area. So anyway,
Great area.
yeah, so today's Monday and Sunday with Eagles play another evening game. Unfortunately, and I'm very worried about that Baltimore game being moved. We'll see.
Hmm.
We'll see if that game gets blocked from being flexed because it obviously would make a ton of sense for that to be flexed at night because it's such a great game.
Right.
No question about it. But anyway, you're right. The Rams this week, we'll see. We'll talk more about that on Wednesday morning show. We'll take a look more at the injuries on that show, any potential lineup changes that are coming. But the bottom line is that was a really interesting win. Very fascinating game, that game against the Commandos. There are a lot of twists and turns, and what happened in the last quarter was just remarkable. I mean, it was such an onslaught. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, we have a YouTube commenter who keeps wondering how long I'm gonna let you get away with calling them the Commandos because I chuckle every time you say
I know.
Commandos
I
because
know. I
it's
know.
like our teenage humor, like going Commando.
I hate the name Commanders. I mean, come on, that's
I
so
don't like the
lame.
name Commanders either, so I like that you mock it. So I'm gonna let you
Yeah.
say it every time. Commandos, they're
I know.
going
I
Commando.
know. I know.
That should be their slogan, like we're going Commando.
Yeah, exactly. I knew that was coming, but I know. It's so lame, and it's funny because now they haven't decided what they're going to do for the future with the name, whether they're going to change it or not. So,
Hmm. Yeah. By the way, real quick side story that is funny, so people will enjoy it. I can't remember the name of the eagle. I swear I'm not protecting him. I just don't remember. This is probably in 2007. Okay, so we're
oh
talking
God,
about 20 years almost ago, right? There was a
17. Yeah.
player that the Eagles had who confused the term going commando with Rambo, right? The other movie, another movie with Sylvester Stallone, right? And so one time this player noticed another player just putting his jeans on, getting dressed, getting out, maybe no underwear. And he goes, "Oh, you're
Ah,
going," he goes, "You're going Rambo, huh?" And he would say this every once in a while, going Rambo. And finally, the dude goes, "What do you mean going Rambo?" He goes, "Oh, you're just putting your jeans on straight, nothing underneath." He's like, "That's not called Rambo. That's called
it's
Commando."
Commando. Yeah,
And the
exactly.
guy's like, no, it's not. And then so this dude who was mistaken starts polling other Eagles, me, other like reporters, and we're like, nah, dude, that's called going commando. And he's like, oh man, this whole time I thought it was called going
So
Rambo.
funny. Hey, what?
But we were
Although,
all like,
look,
thank we were all like happy because now we understand that you were just confused. We thought like maybe like where he's from or something culturally, it's called going Rambo. But no, he just got them confused and that's what
so
he called
funny.
it. Yeah, we educated him. That's what we do here in the Philadelphia. We educate people on slang.
Hmm. That is so funny. Some of the stuff that's gone in locker rooms.
Yeah.
I think the first time I was in Eagles locker room was like 2000, 2001 at the vet. It's funny. We've never talked about that. Did you cover them when they were at the vet? I guess
No,
you
no,
did.
no, no. I
Yeah.
didn't get on until about 2005.
What a
So,
dump. What disgusting. I
yeah.
don't even get me
Well, I've been
started.
to the vet, so yeah,
Yeah,
I
no,
know
but the
that.
locker room was just so awful. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard.
let's move on.
Remember, I also covered minor league baseball, and I got
Ah,
to know Sparky
there you go.
Lyle. I got to know Sparky Lyle really well. He was the manager of the team I covered, and man, what an amazing personality! And yeah, he had some vet stories as well from his brief time with the Phillies. So, all right, so I've spent a few days trying to recap. You said something in the post game show that I think it's not that we glossed over it, but it's really worth a discussion, and it goes into this trend about the Eagles, and how well and how much they've run the ball, and through 10 games they've run the ball 51% of the time. They're still the only team in the NFL to have more runs than passes. And by the way, it's working for them.
I know.
They're 8-2. So, and I know you're not run game truther or pass game. We talk about common sense. And you made a comment in the post game where you thought maybe they ran the ball a little bit too much in the first half because it really wasn't working well. And I kept thinking like, should they have passed the ball a little more? And then I thought about, well, when they did try to pass, and you made this point too. You said maybe not because when they were passing the ball, it wasn't going well either. But I think what that goes to show you is just how, I mean, every team has imperfections, right? Every team can struggle at times. The Eagles have a really unique ability to be able to adjust on the fly. Or if something's not working, like the run game's not working, but it's their bread and butter, they can stick to it. And as we said, eventually in a tight game, all it takes is one or two Barkley runs, and they got two within a 40-second span to really change the game over. So I kind of applaud them for Adam for not abandoning the run because it wasn't working so well and figuring that eventually with the way their defense was playing, they're gonna break one. And that's what they did. And that makes them pretty unique compared to other teams that probably go to plan B when plan A doesn't work for an entire half or most of a half.
Well, they are playing to the running game and defense. There's no question about it. I've never seen this happen. Cover this team nearly 27 years. I've never seen this before. It's never would have believed it, but here we
Mhm.
are. They are absolutely a running team. The numbers show it. And by the way, Hurts is a part of that. He really wasn't last year. He didn't look right physically, but he looks really good running the football. Barkley's
Yeah.
been incredible. We'll get to him later. But if you just look at it, right? The first half play calls tell you what kind of team that they are. Every team passes more than they run the first half. That's not breaking news.
Right.
But if you look at this season comparatively to 22, right? This season, they're running the ball 43.1% of the time, ninth in the NFL, passing at about 57%. Now, obviously, when you're winning, you're up against some of these bad teams. Not we'll take Washington out of it, although that helped. But they're still running the ball a ton in the second half, more than any other team. They're number one in the NFL in terms of run percentage,
Mhm.
59.4% by a wide margin. Pittsburgh second. It's
Yeah,
just
but,
what they
and
are.
think about that. That's really significant because it's very easy to say, well, yeah, when you're winning, you just run the ball. But it's not like the Eagles have blown out a whole lot of teams. This is one of the few wins they recently had. The Giants game, I think, are the only two games this year that they've won by more than one possession. We talked about how they went a long, long stretch where every game was close, but they were still able to run the ball even if it was just a one possession lead in the second half. And they've used Saquon in a way that he did not flourish in New York as a closer. He's been able to close out games for them. So that is significant. It's not just like we're up 3 touchdowns, run the ball, run the ball. They've
Right.
had close games where they've still run the ball in the second half.
Yeah, in fact, the Jacksonville game where he had the big lead, and they blew it, of
Oh,
course. That,
yeah.
that they might have run the ball 40, whatever. I don't have it in front. They could have run it like crazy in the second half, but they were running it well, and then all of a sudden, craziness happened. But just I do want to mention 22 season comparatively, just to
Mhm.
tell you how different it was. In the first half of games in 22 with Miles Sanders as the back, where there were questions whether he could be lead back. He was definitely lead back, but how much volume he could handle. They were a heavy pass team. This is when Hurts was bombing away. 64.2% in the first half of games, they were throwing the football. Okay, you're typically 63 to 67 in the first half. Okay, depending on the year, they were 64.2% in the first half of games. In the second half of games, they were running at 53.5% of the time, right?
Mhm.
And in the second half of games now, they're running at 59.4%, way higher. It's because it's the Barkley Hurts factor. It's more Barkley, obviously.
Yeah.
And there's no question his second half numbers are greater. There's just I don't know whether it's kind of subjective. You're not going to know for sure why, whether they keep running and they're wearing the defense down. He clearly continues to have big runs in the second half. It's just remarkable, as you were saying earlier here. You keep giving it to him. Eventually, he's going to break one or two, or three or
Mhm.
four, and he's doing it. And you saw the first half of this game where it wasn't looking great in the first half. It was just okay. You kept giving it to him, and it just happens. And the other part about this, before we move on, is
Mhm.
this offensive line. I know people point to the Lions now. It's debatable between the Eagles and Lions whose offensive line is better. It's obviously subjective. There's no way to quantify it other than you go through the individual, go through the tape, you go through the numbers. But it's so close because you got the power and lightning duo with the Lions. But Barkley, what he's doing is legendary, and it's really really special. And I mean, I for my lifetime living here, I saw Wilbert Montgomery, who was phenomenal, so underrated, number 31, wasn't a Hall of Famer, but a very good back. We've seen a host of running backs for the last 30 to 40 years, but nothing like this that we're seeing right now. And he's over 1,000 yards, folks. It's pretty special.
Yeah, it really is. Before we go any further, it is a great time because basketball is upon us, and not just NBA basketball, but college basketball. We know there's a lot of Big Five fans out there in the Philadelphia area. You may want to go see Temple. You may want to go see Villanova. You may want to go see even Drexel, LaSalle. It doesn't matter. There's great college basketball everywhere in the Delaware Valley. And if you want to get tickets to hear that squeaky sound of the sneakers, because there's nothing like seeing basketball live, right? And the squeak and the swish of the net. You want to get tickets, you got to use the Game Time app. All right. Game Time has a wonderful feature that we've been telling you about called Game Time Picks. And it makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. And it filters out all the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I don't know about you, Adam, but I think the greatest type of basketball game to go to is the one where it's sort of neck and neck, fourth quarter, and then the last 2 minutes. Yeah, you got to deal with the timeouts and everything, but the buzzer beaters, like Villanova winning on the Chris Jenkins shot. Those are the
Oh,
greatest
oh,
environments ever to go. And in regular season basketball, you still get that. So that's a great reason to go see basketball live and in action. All right. So pick a date, find a great game, go to the Game Time app, find the super deal. That will tell you that's one of those game time picks deals. The super deal is one of their great tiers that'll tell you where the best value is in the arena that you're seeing it. And of course, you'll get your view from the seat. That's another wonderful part of the app, along with your purchase being covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry, and that includes event cancellation protection and job loss protection. They've also got the lowest price guarantee, or game time credits you 110% of the difference. And this works for shows, for theater shows. There's always a lot of those during the holidays as well, concerts, comedy acts. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets and use Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code BIRDS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code BIRDS, BIRDS, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Before we get into injury, Adam, and talk about one concern, I do want to ask you though, just sort of a fun conversation right now, because you mentioned Saquon Barkley and how great he's been, and he has. Um, MVP candidate, I think, is fair.
Yep.
Would you say right now, like he's on track to be maybe a top three MVP candidate?
All right. Right now, Lamar has been unbelievable.
How about Lamar having a better year now than any of his than last year's season, which was an MVP season, or even the first MVP
Yeah.
season? That's unbelievable.
Well, the thing about him is the so-called second reaction runs where the pocket breaks down. I've look, I'm old enough to remember Fran Tarkenton. Yeah, I just gave my age sort of. Fran Tarkenton's best scrambling quarterback in NFL history. Got him really to the Hall of Fame. But Lamar with his arm is he's got beautiful touchdown field. And it just his and he's gotten way better at maintaining his downfield focus. And obviously having Derrick Henry there helps. But it's one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen. I mean, he's special. But I would say Lamar would be one, and I got to vote in two polls, so I I got to start thinking about this at some point. Mahomes is not anywhere close to it. Hell, no, I know they're not. No, but he's not the reason. Their defense is carrying them. That's
Yeah,
all like
it really is. No, I agree with you. Is there
Goff.
a lion? Not Goff,
I
but
know. I was
there
just getting there. I was going to say Goff 5 interceptions. Sorry,
Amon Ra, or maybe I don't know.
Hmm,
They're just such a complete team. It's
really
hard to
good.
find one guy that really sticks
Great
out there.
question. I don't. Who would be number two?
I think maybe Derrick Henry would be a
He
number
might be
two.
up there. He's definitely in the conversation in the top 10, maybe top 5, 7.
Yeah.
Um,
I think, and that's where, Saquon probably comes into
Has to be. I mean,
yeah,
Josh Allen's been good, but you got to understand they're not throwing the ball downfield. This Joe Brady offense is really restrictive.
yeah.
I mean, he's efficient. He's not turning over, but I mean, I don't think he's been that
No,
good.
but he is a quarterback. So I mean, if they
I
finish
know.
with 13, he'll be in it. I think Hurts will be in it, but I do think as a quarterback, it's going to be tough to beat out Lamar. If all things are equal, if they both win their divisions or they both get top two seeds, it's going to be almost impossible to beat out Lamar if you're a quarterback. And B, I know voters tend to look at stats a lot, especially if they don't watch a team. And
Yeah.
Hurts's passing stats aren't going to. He has 12 touchdown passes, I think, and Lamar's in the 20s, or a couple of guys in the mid. I mean, he has half as many TD passes, and voters aren't going to say, "Oh yeah, but Hurts has like maybe 20 total touchdowns with the runs or something." I don't have the stats in
Mhm.
front of me. You just know to win it as a quarterback, you kind of have to have like immortal type season the way Lamar is having it.
Hurts is not, but I would say this though. You just mentioned it. You got to take the quarterback runs to do it.
You do.
He looks so much better. Like we in training camp, we noticed he wasn't wearing the sleeve anymore. The first couple games, I wasn't totally sure, but as the season's progressed, he's been a major factor running the football. Now, I got to learn more about Kyler Murray. I got to learn more about him because them being 6-4, like you got to be kidding me. I never saw this. Like I can't believe how good the Cardinals they have like very little talent. They're six and
Yeah,
four.
I know. It's kind of crazy. He's had some amazing games too, Kyler Murray, where
Yeah,
he's been like 24 of 28, which is not like something you've ordinarily, and not run.
right. That's the part.
They've won
That's
games
it.
where he hasn't had to
Been a
run, which is
factor.
pretty
I
amazing.
mean, Burrow, the team's terrible. So, I mean, he's been really carrying the team. Their
Hmm.
defense has been disappointing. No, it's a good question. I hadn't thought of it yet because it's a little early.
Yeah.
But Lamar is just scintillating. I don't even know what to say. But you mentioned the MVP years. This is otherworldly just to watch him. It makes your mouth drop because you don't know. he could kill you with his arm and his legs. You just don't. He's so explosive as a runner. And then I love when he flicks it. It's so frustrating as a defender. They watch him roll right when the pocket breaks down. What's he going to do? What's he going to do? Is he going to run or throw it? And he decides to flick it to Nelly Aguilar
Yeah,
downfield. It's like, oh man, that's got to be backbreaking. Anyway,
no doubt about it. All right, back to the Eagles. Interesting. One guy who got hurt in the game that we have to keep a monitor on because he never came back in
yep.
was defensive tackle Milton Williams, who's having a really, really good year. Did you say something in the post game about the Eagles would like to be able to retain him?
Yeah, they've been trying. I mean, it's not a secret to any reporter. It's not a secret at
Right.
all. They've been trying. We'll see. It's early, but occasionally the Eagles extend players by Thanksgiving. And see, the thing with Milton is he's not a stats guy. It's a tape. It's totally by tape.
Hmm.
It's blowing plays up, really good run defender, super strong, leverage player. Been a great story development. I know Aleem McNeil's been the better player, but Aleem McNeil doesn't really play the same position.
No, they're different. They're different.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's really not a fair comparison. But anyway, he's been a great story. So we'll monitor that. That's the one injury that we know about. And we'll see about the pop up. They don't have to have an injury report till Wednesday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern.
Hmm.
We'll see. But that's the one we'll monitor for the week.
I wonder. I was thinking about Milton Williams the other day as it pertains to Javon Hargrave, who was always a backup who was thrust into starting for the Steelers when they had injuries and played well, but he was always on a good D line, right? And wasn't necessarily great for the scheme that the Steelers play. And then he came to the Eagles, which really brought out and accentuated his strength. So I wonder if Milton Williams can go somewhere, sign a contract to be a starter, if he becomes like an 8 to 10 sack or a multi-pressure type guy, because he shows you that ability. And I agree with you. I think that he's caused a lot of sacks that other guys have gotten. We always say
Mm-hmm.
sacks aren't important. It's what you're doing to create pressures. And I think he does a fantastic job of creating pressures. Now, it just might be that he works best as a rotational interior tackle. That I don't know. What I'm saying is I wonder though if like Hargrave, if he went somewhere where he started, played a lot of reps, had that coaching, good environment around him, if you could see him becoming whether it's Pro Bowl or just close to Pro Bowl level interior starting defensive tackle.
Yeah, he's more of a tangibles lunch pail guy, Milt Williams. And Javon Hargrave was always a good pass rusher coming out of South Carolina
He
State, I
was.
think it was.
Yeah.
And with the Steelers, he was in it during his time. And then he got to play here in the wide nine, and that really helped him. By the way, they're running the same front with the Niners.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, he's lost for the year with a torn triceps. He
Yeah.
got hurt. He got hurt in week 3 and went on IR week 4. And that's crushing. When you lose an interior pass rusher like him,
Yep.
they're paying over $20 million a
I
season.
know. I
Oh
know.
well.
I know. Well, Milton is a good intangibles guy, but remember, he did come out of Louisiana with incredible testing numbers. So he's not just a lunch pail, I mean, he's got really good athletic traits for that position, explosive traits. He had a bunch of tackles for a loss and hit sacks at where is he? Louisiana?
Louisiana Tech, I think. The thing is, though,
Now it's just Louisiana, right? Don't they call it
yeah,
Louisiana?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But the bottom line is here, he's been a great story development.
Hmm.
And it's fascinating to see what happens because he's now a starter. They with their 3-man front, they play 3D tackles. So yeah, it's and the problem is they don't have any veteran depth. Jomo's a pass rusher. He's not a run stopper. And Thomas Booker's been a nice story, but he barely plays.
Right.
So this is where not having a veteran defensive tackle on the practice squad to come off of it is a problem.
Yeah, so
Kind
that's why I wanted to bring up with Vic, by the way, also. Yeah, so you're right that if he's out for long term with a foot injury, that puts Ojomo into a role. And Ojomo had a nice we talked about his flash play over the first few weeks, but he really isn't playing as much now because of their rotation. And the second thing that really jumps out to me, Adam, about Vic Fangio, and I love how you said this earlier in the year, like going into the year, that the Eagles for a while have been running this Vic Fangio concept type of defense, but now they've got the real thing, and
Yeah.
we'll see the difference, right? So we've already seen the defense difference on the back end, but I think I'm surprised and pleasantly on how adaptable he is. For example, he really doesn't play that 5-man front very often. He only plays it if the team they're playing is going to come out in 12 personnel and if he really thinks they're going to run because he's even responded to some 12 personnel in a traditional nickel 4-man front. Cooper DeJean's still out there because he notices those tight ends can catch the ball a little bit. I think Greg Cosell pointed this out. The Eagles have been in nickel like 87% of the time since Cooper became a starting nickelback, which means they're in a four-man front quite a bit. And I remember the last few years, whether it was Gannon or whether it was Desai slash Patricia, that they would be in their five-man front like almost regardless if a team was going to bring two running backs or two tight ends on the almost like inadaptable to it. And now that they're Vic is saying, no, I like my four-man front. I'll stay in my four-man front and I'll keep DeJean on the field in nickel, even if you're coming out in 12 personnel, because we're playing really good team defense this way. And if you want to pass on us, good luck. Because in the past, remember, the Eagles would be in their five-man front, and then those quarterbacks would pick them apart on the edges because it's tough to play a 5-1 and really be able to contain the flats. And I think the Eagles are doing a way better job of that now. And I coughed that up to Vic being Vic, not an archetype or a disciple of Vic trying to do what Vic does, but not necessarily what Vic does.
And that means two things. He's playing to the personnel that he was given. That's really good coaching because
Yep.
it's definitely true that some people around the league thought Vic was too stubborn.
Mm-hmm.
I heard the Dolphins players, pipe off about Vic, and it's kind of critical. We were wondering about that. I'll be honest with you. We weren't going to make a big deall of it. We're just going to pay attention to would we hear
Sure.
anything. We've not heard anything bad. Yeah, and to your point, they played a 4-2. They occasionally play this 4-2-5. Milton Williams technically did not start the last game,
Mm-hmm.
but he plays a ton of snaps. It's just starting only means who's out there for the first play of the game on offense or defense. Technically, that's what it means.
Right.
But Nolan Smith did play a lot and did start last week.
Right.
I mean, marginal improvement. We'll get into that in a minute. But the bottom line is, overall, this has been quite the story of this football team. 8-2 is not something I saw. I just didn't see that.
And how about Jalen Carter playing all 66% of the snaps and Jalix Hunt playing none after like kind of getting some good accolades the week before against Jacksonville, was it? No, Dallas. He plays no snaps. That's just, again, though, it shows you Vic's he sees a matchup, he sees something that he likes, and he believes in it. And to believe that Jalen Carter could be effective on all snaps, and he was incredibly effective, was good coaching, I believe.
That was stunning. I mean, Carter, because remember the conditioning. I mean, two coaches called him out. Vic did, and Clint Hurt. They talked about it. It wasn't just Jordan Davis. They talked about Carter.
Yes.
In the offseason. So that was stunning. I mean, this is a great now having the extra day, the 4 days off. Quite frankly, it's Thursday and they don't practice. The first real practice is on Wednesday. So maybe they felt that they can do it. So he'll get some time off. And this defense is fascinating, but the schedule it's going to be more challenging because you got the Rams offense. We'll talk about this later in the week.
Mm-hmm.
About what they present. We'll talk about that on the Wednesday show, but just to give you an early, they're a heavy 11 personnel team. I know Miami shut them down, but that's only one game. You got Baltimore, you got all that they do, you got Pittsburgh on what they do. It's going to be fascinating coming up here what the Eagles are going to face.
All right, so we'll have to monitor that foot injury from Milton Williams and
Yes.
see. We'll have more on that on Wednesday. The injury report for the Eagles here, of course, is presented by our friends at Stretch Zone. You can get 10% off your first month of membership at Stretch Zone if you mention Inside the Birds. It is worth it. I have my weekly appointment today. I'm really excited to do what I've been talking about, which is get the stretch after the run as opposed to before the run to see from a recovery standpoint just how effective that is. I'm going to the one near me in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Adam, you've got a bunch near you in Pennsylvania, and there's 12 locations all around the Philadelphia and New Jersey area.
Yep. So Chester Counter, Main Line, Haverford, that's near Suburban Square. Devon near the Whole Foods. Exton near the Whole Foods, by the way. It's across the street from the Whole Foods. It's funny how they put them near Whole Foods. That makes sense. You want to put where the healthy stores are, right?
Sure.
South Philly, Graduate Point / Washington Ave. I know exactly where that is. Montgomery County, where I grew up in Elkins Park, right on 611 in Town Plaza, Upper Dublin / Strushers off 611. Also, they have one in Feasterville, New Jersey, where you're talking about, in Cherry Hill, Mount Laurel, Franklin Lakes, Northfield, and Princeton. To get the free stretch, it's simple. Go to stretchzone.com, hit that book free stretch button at the top right. Just hit it. It takes 30 seconds to fill out and get your 30-minute free stretch, stretchzone.com.
So worth it. All right, let's talk about some other things that will be an overview for why this Eagles team is 8-2. Some of the players that we've really seen develop, and I want to talk about Saquon Barkley because we already talked about his MVP candidacy and what he's doing. He is not a perfect player. There are times in pass pro that we brought out earlier in the year that was not good. But the whole idea is that nobody's perfect, right? And it's funny how when we talk about Saquon Barkley's imperfections and then also talk about how the great things he does, nobody hits us up on YouTube or Twitter saying, why do you have to talk about his bad pass pro or something? But other players that we talk about, it's like all they only hear is the things that we say and not all the positive stuff. Kind of funny how that works. But anyway, Saquon Barkley has been tremendous. And the big thing is the running with power and the finishing. And listen, I think people are no. You even hear the broadcasters say, "Wow," or the analysts on, national analysts like, "Wow, he's running differently than he did with the Giants," or he's showing you something that even the
Yeah.
Giants couldn't see. And that was our point is when he came here and we said, "Well, here's the book on him." The pass pro wasn't great, and the contact balance and finishing wasn't great. Now Saquon has come out and give a lot of credit to Jamal Singleton and the coaching staff. And you are definitely seeing the difference there. And that's great. That's player development.
Two things that he was really not good with the Giants, or wildly inconsistent and maddening at times from tape, is his second level. Let's say it's a toss right and he cuts it up. He'll run straight past somebody. But it would come time to beat the second guy when you get to the second level. He'd run right into the defender, or he'd go down. That's not good. Well,
Right.
he's not doing that here. Whether it's Jamal Singleton, I'm sure the coaching has something to do with it. Also, his vision is phenomenal. That's when you get through the hole with the speed and seeing the defender making the second defender miss with a jump cut or whatever the case may be, his vision and the finishing. So in the second half, and this plays to the running, like the rarity that the Giants would get a lead with him. That was the thing, 232 to 235. That he was not a finisher.
Right.
You didn't feel like he could be the guy you could just salt the game away with carries to. Now you can. Kenny G could help too. Certainly, he's been able
Right.
to do that, grind
Right.
carries with him. But Barkley has been. That's the thing, and I wanted us to mention the improvement because if you want to know the secret sauce of an 8-2 team, this is why.
Yep.
It's coaching and player development. And Sirianni, and credit him when we reported this at the time when he got interviewed at the compound, I guess at Jeffrey Lurie's compound in Florida. I don't know where the hell it is, but somewhere in Florida.
Compound.
Yeah,
I
I
think it's in
call it that.
Jupiter.
Yeah, okay, whatever it is. Yeah, you know, but when he interviewed, we had heard pretty strongly that he mentioned player development, and you're seeing it. And I know they have that after practice development period, which is great. And by the way, the Eagles are not the only team to do it, as I understand. But I could tell you that the player development and Nick's being a former college player, whatever the case may be, I don't know where he got this idea. You would think every coach does that. They say it, but they don't do it. He does it. That's the point.
Yeah. I also think it speaks to Saquon that you're a player that good. You've had accolades. You've been to the Pro Bowl. I think you've been an All Pro. And you come to a new team and you don't act like none of your game needs refinement, right? I mean, he's, like I said, he's credited the coaching staff with helping him in certain areas grow and develop. And I think it's hard to find guys that successful already, even if they come from bad teams who are willing to be molded even more. So,
Yep.
credit to him for that. And it's clearly been a huge difference on the team. Another underrated guy who had a really fantastic, we probably shouldn't be surprised by the fact that he's been a pretty good contributor this year because he had a really good camp. I mean, he won his job almost after just a week of camp, and that's Grant Calcaterra. He won that number two tight end job. I'll say this: when you watch the tape, you can tell he's not a great blocker. I think even when you watch it live, you can see he's not great. I wouldn't call him a turnstile either. He's just not great at it. But he gives you what effort he can give you. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't just be like, there you go. He tries to engage. He does his best. He just and occasionally he'll make a block. I'm not trying to say he's completely block deficient. It's not his strength, but he's trying. He
He is.
certainly
He
catches
gives
the ball.
effort. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's like with Zach Ertz when Zach came here. I mean, he just couldn't block. And Zach learned how to be a better positional blocker where you angle yourself a little bit better.
Yes.
He just Grant's trying. You're right. But he's an athlete. See, for 7 years we've called the OTAs double A, training camp, triple A, and majors regular season. When I saw him in OTAs, I'm like, okay, looks like he always does athletic, but you could see how much better he's moving. Like, all right, let's see what happens in training camp. And it wasn't even close between him and CJ Uzama. Uzama, you figure they would keep him to be their wide tight end. They didn't
Mhm.
know that Jack Stoll would become available. So anyway, Grant won the two job. It was, I mean, you could call it competition, but it was over pretty early. And then they brought Uzama back, who was active this game. They elevated him, so he's back in the practice squad now. But the bottom line is, this has been a good story. They've needed him. When Goddard got hurt, they needed him to make plays, and he did that against Cleveland. He had a really good game. Against Cincinnati, he had a good game. He's a seam runner. This has been a good story of, quite frankly, if you look over the drafts over the last 3 to 4 years, all of a sudden these draft classes are looking a lot better. No question about that. They're looking a lot better.
Yeah, no, no, that's true. I love that you mentioned the angle blocking element. I feel like that's an area where Grant can improve and not without having to become a road grader, right? Where if you're lined up on the left side of the left tackle and you know it's an outside run to the left, you know the running back's going to go outside you, your outside shoulder. So if you can just turn your body and leverage the defender inside, you don't even have to like completely block him, but if you can just get
Yeah.
your out leverage him, right? Just get your body to the outside, his to the inside, so that when the pitch comes, the defender is not in a good spot to recover instead of just running you over and stopping and showing color. I think that that's an area Grant can and maybe will improve from this year to next. And again, he'll never, like you said, he'll never be a great blocker, and neither was Zach. But Zach learned the elements of that, and Jason Kelsey was one of the best angle blockers and use of
Mhm.
leverage there ever was. So there's plenty of guys that he can learn from and watch tape from on that. Another guy, this one's fascinating, right? When you talk about the offensive line, which has played pretty well, they're starting Mekhi Becton at right guard. There's probably an argument to be made that Tyler Seton is as good, if not better, but they're going with Becton. That was their guy from the start. It's a Stoutland guy. He's played well. He's played to the point where we don't come out of games going, Mekhi Becton, I don't know. Which is they always say about an offensive lineman. As long as you're not mentioning their name, they must be doing something right.
No, he's been a good story. No question. He's gotten his timing down on the right side with Lane. It's one of those again where you go, boy, is this going to work? I remember when I ran into this guy who worked for the Eagles over the years on my training camp tour past summer, and he laughed. He has a high respect for Stout. He goes, "This is so Stout." He goes, and this guy didn't think that Becton could do it, and this guy was wrong. But he said, "Look, the guy's not a guard. He's just not."
Right.
And I go, "Okay, but don't Stout? You work for the Eagles. You must think like." Stout's a god. He goes, I love Stout. He's phenomenal. He's one of the best coaches I've ever been around. But this is crazy. A guy this big thinking he can make it work. He goes, but this is Stout has this undying belief that anything could work. And by golly, he's right once again.
Yes, he is. And he's done a good job. And then you carry that over to Cam Jurgens, who's done a nice job at center. I think that I guess Stoutland is the run, right? He creates the run game. We know
Yes.
that Kellen Moore creates the pass plays and the overall offense. They've done an excellent job of trying to avoid situations where Jurgens has to block too many guys one on one. He's usually helping. Usually when they run, he's double teaming. Then he's going up into the middle. It's inside zone or outside zone. He can kick in. Every once in a while in pass pro, the opponent will put 5 minute line of scrimmage, send five, and that puts them in more one-on-one blocking situations. But he's handled himself well there, too. Not great, but well enough for the offense to function and be a pretty good offense.
He's been really good. He's developed. You remember he played right guard last season, first year
Yep.
starting at center. Doesn't have a lot of experience at center because remember he came to Nebraska as a tight end, then moved to center. But yeah, he's absolutely rebounded well, and he's in social media. People love the blocks because you see a little Kelsey's bigger than Kelsey a little bit,
Yeah.
but you see some of the blocks that he has. He'll continue to get better. It's another guy who's developed, man. When you're 8-2, it's just not blind. You develop, you become this type of team better than people expected because your players are developing.
He had a Kelsey moment in the either third or fourth quarter against Washington. I forget who it was, where he jumped into the second level. It was a safety. He blocked a safety, and then the safety got up, and then he blocked him to the ground again.
Yep.
And I was like, oh my God, how many times have we seen that from Jason Kelsey, where you're a finisher, right? I mean, that's what you like. You're developing that finishing. Don't think your work is done because you blocked the guy once, but then continue to block him if he gets up. That to me was like, all right, I know you've studied from one of the best. You played behind one of the best to be able to do that. That was a Kelsey moment.
Incredible. That play I saw it. It's been all over social. So I was kind of referring to every once in a while you'll see them. People put it on social, but Again, their offensive line, again, you could argue, is it Detroit or the Eagles? It's a coin flip, but there's a reason why more often than not the Eagles are a good football team, sometimes elite. It's because it starts with the offensive defensive lines. And
Yep.
again, we'll say it, don't understand why teams don't take this seriously. It seems so obvious. Well, if you go through 32 teams, it's obviously not obvious to those teams. They
Right.
don't get it. It's oh, they have two good guys and three not so good. Well, you want to know why you're not a good football team? That's why.
There you go. So as we good segue there, my friend. Defensive line. We've been saying when's Jalen Carter going to have a New Orleans Saints like game again and really dominate? In the last 2 weeks, Cowboys
Hmm.
he dominated that game. It was hard to give him tons of credit. Not hard, but I'm saying that you had to consider the opponent. But Washington, I almost felt like that game was a better game for Jalen Carter than New Orleans because Sam Cosmi is a really good right guard. And this was a really big game, and he just asserted himself and he dominated and he pushed the pocket around a lot on Jaden Daniels and made Jaden Daniels either have to run or move his mark, got uncomfortable. He was just violent. That was a great game for Jalen Carter.
It's funny you mentioned the violent thing. There was a play, and it wasn't taunting, but he looked at the guy. I forget who he tackled. It was in a
Mhm.
superhuman play, and I'm like, man, don't do it. Don't get it unsportsmanlike. And he walked away. Like he stood over the guy and looked at him like, uh-oh.
Yep. I know what you're
But
talking about. Yep.
yeah, he's incredible. I mean, I don't even know what to say anymore. The point is why he has to be on this list. Obviously, we all know he's improving. He's now more consistent
Yep.
because that was the problem during the first 6 or 7 games. You'd see the New Orleans game, as you mentioned, the Tampa Bay game. I know they were without other players, but he was gassed early in the game. That's not good. You got to be better than that. You mentioned that time. What was he? Was he leaning on a referee? Did you tell me that? Was he?
Referee tapped him on the shoulder and he fell over.
Yeah, something like that.
Like like he fell over like a sack of bricks. Like it was
That's
like
crazy. God, I wish I would have seen that. I might have to look for that. But anyway, so yeah, you can't be this good at 8-2 without guys dominating. Yeah, you can't just be good. You have to have guys like Barkley are dominating
Mhm.
and units that are dominating. And Jalen Carter's unbelievable. And we've not heard, by the way, off the field stuff. We've not heard anything so far.
So
We know there
far
were a
so good.
couple little things last year. One in the CVS pharmacy or something. But so far so good.
He was late to him, wasn't it this year that he was late to a
That's the
meeting?
one,
Yeah, it
right?
was
But we're
like
not
week two. Yeah, but since
right, and
then
that's
he's
why he
been
didn't
good.
start. But we're not.
Right.
We're talking about off the field, not football stuff. We're talking about off the field, away from the club,
Correct.
which
Right.
was concerning. But no, you're right to bring it up. That's fair, absolutely fair. That's a fair. Like you can't do that.
Right.
But nothing bad where you're we're we got to watch this. But he is developing, and Clint Hurt. We knew eventually it's going to take. And Clint Hurt, the D line coach, is phenomenal. And you look at Moro Jomo, who flashes. He's been a great star. I know Cosell put us on to him when Greg broke his tape down in Texas. He goes, "This kid." He asked me, "Why do you think he went in the seventh?" And we heard maturity, some stuff about being consistent, whatever.
Yeah,
He's a good football player, and I'll tell you, he flashes almost every game.
he does. He flashes. And so like you're not getting, obviously we'll see what happens with Milton Williams out, but you're getting like sort of an occasional snaps for a Jomo, some for Booker here and there. When you put them together though, they give you some nice togetherness reps out of that
Yep.
spot. And they may be asked to do more depending how it goes with Milton. Linebackers, I mean, like we just can't talk enough about N'Kobe Dean and Zach Bond, especially Zach Bond, never playing the position. I will say I look forward to doing the show this week with Greg inside the tape. He did feel that there were a couple of things Washington did with Eckler. If you remember, Eckler had about 2 or 3 catches that went for big yards, and that was schemed. That the reason why he was wide open, he said, because the Eagles linebackers were um, their eye discipline on certain
Hmm.
formations or movement got them. So that
Okay.
is something to watch going forward. But for the most part, what can you say? I mean, this reminds me of the Super Bowl season all over again. The one from a couple of years ago where you got great play out of Edwards and Kaiser White, and you were really comfortable, happy with
This
what you
is
were getting.
right. This is the first game, and we talked about this in the summer. We thought the Eagles backers would get crushed in coverage. They have not. Like that's been so pleasant surprise until this game where Eckler had a number of 8 or 9
Yeah,
catches in the game, and you talk about they got him a little bit, so that's something to be concerned about. Now, I know you could hit the back within 5 yards. They may have to start doing that to slow the back up. We'll have to see. We know Justice Hill they play. He's their red zone runner and pass catcher sometimes with the Ravens.
hmm
We'll take a look at that. Some of the backs of the Kyron Williams, holy smokes. He's phenomenal, whether as a runner or as a pass catcher. But Nakobe's been way more consistent in space, though. I'm surprised that teams have not gotten him much.
Right.
He's downhill, phenomenal. We mentioned Bond, who only started 14 games over 4 years with the Saints. He played strong side linebacker almost exclusively, never played inside, and a little bit on the edge. So he's had to learn a new position in an offseason, and now, now is one of the best inside backers in football. It's a pretty great story. And then as an edge guy, I just wanted to mention him. This has been what we call a redevelopment of Josh Sweat, who took the major pay cut.
Mhm.
He's played great, very consistent, rebounded well from last season. He's not going for sacks. He's playing the edge really well as an edge defender. When you're basically you have to funnel stuff when you're the force player. He's doing a great job of doing that. And if you want to talk about why the run defense is so good, these are the hidden things that we don't talk enough about. Is the edge defenders? Yes, part of their game is they have to funnel stuff. Sometimes he's doing a good job of that.
Yep, absolutely. Looks like he's always played with tenacity, right? It was always even last
Yeah.
year, it wasn't that he didn't play with tenacity. It's just that he didn't have the get off and that he didn't have that second energy that he was because he that's where he gets a lot of sacks. He's a second effort guy as well. But this year, so far, knock on wood. Now again, we're only through a little bit more than half the year, so we have to see how he holds up. But so far, you see that tenacity back. The get off is there, and he's causing havoc. So he's been playing well.
Yep.
On the back end, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, obviously two huge difference makers. And what I really think about is for Quinyon is it was not a great start for Quinyon Mitchell. If you remember, was week 2 against Atlanta where he was out of position a lot on that final Falcons drive. They go down the field very easily, score the touchdown, lose the game. That was after the Saquon drop, right? And then Tampa, we talked about the difficulties that he had against the Buccaneers, giving 20 yards of cushion to guys like Sterling Shepard. And gradually, coming out of the bye, they've asked him to do a little more, play up, press, do things that you did not do at Toledo. And he has responded well. He's obviously a quick learner. His football intelligence is through the roof. His confidence is always through the roof. And you're starting to see the makings of a guy who can do more than just one thing and gives Vic optionality now on how he wants to play coverages on the back end. That's tremendous.
That's the latter part is the salient point here of all. When you have a guy who could press, if you can't press, you can't be a first round pick. That's just the bottom line. You're not gonna if a club doesn't think you could press, you're not going in the first round.
Right.
And I don't want to overrate it too much because it's only the Senior Bowl, but Jim Nagy told us this when we interviewed him. Clubs said, "Hey, could you make sure this guy plays press at the Senior Bowl?" Because he was going to be most likely the top corner drafted, pure corner.
Mm-hmm.
And he did it. Now, that doesn't mean he could do it at this level. You still got to do it. And it's funny you mentioned the Tampa Bay game. Well, since then, via Next Gen Stats, the 6 games after that Bucks game, which was not good, he's been targeted when the ball's actually gone at him.
Mm-hmm.
The passer rating is under 60. He's given up under 90 yards. It's just incredible. To your point, this is funny you mentioned this. I don't think you and I didn't talk about this.
Mm-mm.
It's just funny how you mentioned that and hear the numbers. Because I was looking, I wanted something to just, because tape is 75% of the grade. I get that part, but I like getting numbers that could, sometimes if it doesn't match up, yeah, a number could say, hey, well, the numbers don't match that or the tape doesn't match that. But this is where the numbers and the tape tell you how great he's been. And then Cooper DeJean, one of the most unique nickels we've seen, quite frankly, since that Tampa Bay game. He's only given up 118 yards. They go after him a lot, by the way. Clubs are going, because you have to understand, he's not a static nickel where he only plays in the slot. Okay, you're just going to cover the nickel. You're going to cover the slot receiver. No, that's not all that he does. Not even close to that.
Mm-hmm.
So Vic uses him, to your point earlier, which is a great point, that Vic sees it differently than a lot of clubs saw him. Now, is he going to play outside corner next year? We'll see. Slay's under contract next year. By the way, he's playing well. We'll see. He's the oldest outside corner in the National Football League. But you know what? You want, if you can get the Super Bowl with him or deep in the playoffs, take a look at it. But getting back to DeJean, doing a great job, grading out very well. The passer ratings somewhere around 70, which is still pretty good. And again, as you said, they're throwing a lot on these guys, on Q and Coop. They're throwing a ton of them, and they're rising up. I know people talk about Leto and Sheldon Brown, and I get that. But no offense to those guys. I think these guys are better athletes, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no offense. Sheldon's a great
Well,
player.
I
Great,
just
great
generally
story, but
feel, and listen, I'm not taking away from your point. I feel like
yeah.
in 2024 compared to 2020, you're seeing just like ridiculous athletes at every position now that you didn't see back then. I mean, each generation just gets more and more
Sure, that's fair. Yeah,
ridiculously athletic.
yeah.
Like
But these
Derek,
guys,
look at Derek Henry.
I
How
know.
big is he? Like running back? Like crazy. You know, he would
40
have been a
something.
linebacker in 1998.
I know you don't see. Well, he's an outlier, but
Right.
these guys are so special. It's well, hey, knock on wood for the Eagles' sake, that continues. And the fans, it's funny because you know you're trying to get a jersey. Quignon's 27, it's DeJean 33, right? I think
Yes. Yeah.
33.
Yep.
Hopefully, they won't change their number next year. You know that's the problem.
Yep.
Unless with Fanatics, you get that guarantee where you could trade it in if they change their number. I know some companies have this, but and then finally, I wanted to mention Reed Blankenship, who has 3 picks, 2 out of his last 3 games.
Hmm.
He's more consistent now in coverage. He's playing really well. We don't talk about him enough. I'll admit it, because most of the people we talked to didn't think it would happen, didn't see him as a starter at this level. He's not hurting the team, man. I know there were some problems early in his career with his foot, you know, his feet because he's not fast enough. But it's there, he's not getting killed in coverage. He's playing really well. And again, to bring this home, if you want to know why a team is 8-2, we just gave you the play. You're talking about most of their starters have improved,
Hmm.
played better than expectation. This is why we didn't see it. Like you can't see this in training camp. It, you could talk to people who are there watching the tape in practice, and they'll tell you how it looks, but they don't know. You
Right.
don't know. There's a phrase with coaching. You don't until you get there, and they're there, and they're playing damn well. This is why they're better than expected.
Yeah, Reed strikes me as an environment guy, Adam, that if the best way to get success out of him is to put him in position to succeed, which is have guys who can defend at the corner position, have a
Yeah.
good safety next to him. Don't ask him to be like the second best player on in your back end like he had to be last year at the end of the year. It wasn't working very well. You know, he had Bradbury
No.
wasn't playing well, Slay was in and out. He was okay. Kevin Byard wasn't playing well.
Oh,
The linebackers weren't playing well, and there was just too much pressure on. And there were plays I remember you and I were diagnosing where Blankenship was trying to go outside the role of his job to either make a run stop or try to defend some area in the middle of the field, and motion would kill him. Like it was just, you could tell he was just trying to put everything on himself to try to help stop the bleeding, just like half the other guys on the team going out. And that when you have guys who are trying to do everybody else's job, I think you made this point
last year.
earlier. Yeah, last year,
Oh,
you don't have a good situation. You have too many guys trying to be a hero and not enough guys doing what they're supposed to do.
by the way, on that, it's Clint Hurt, it's Bobby King, it's
Great
Vic
coach. Yeah,
Fangio, Christian
Awesome job.
Parker, who's terrific.
Hmm.
I couldn't come up with anything better. I said that the adults are in the room, adult coaches.
You're
Sorry,
100% right.
but the last year,
But
getting all these
remember what we
college coaches.
said, the fact that almost all of these guys outside of Bobby King, who's done great, have coached under Vic and know what Vic wants. And Vic's here, you are going to get a flow of communication
It's true.
that is very natural, and the trickle down effect will happen, and there shouldn't be confusion. You don't have two different defensive minds like Patricia and Desai trying to battle it out on what you're going to do on second down versus third down. Everything starts at the top, trickles down naturally to the position coaches, which makes it trickle down naturally to the players, and there's a comfort and a communication level that just becomes innate, right? I mean, and I think when the Eagles are playing defense, they're playing good team defense. They just know where they're supposed to be. And that
And
all starts
also,
with what you're saying.
no, I was just gonna, and obviously the GM Roseman deserves a lot of credit. He's the one who picks the players, but
Yeah.
it's how he drafts them. It's up to the coaches to develop them, and his obviously how he's scouting staff too. And they had good information on Quignon and Coop, and the Reed Blankenship is an undrafted free agent. I still don't know. Look, I could get like if he's not, he shouldn't be a third or fourth round pick. But to think that guy shouldn't have been drafted, come on, man. Scott, wasn't he a 5-year starter at MTSU? Am I wrong on that?
Yeah, it's very rare you see a 5-year starter not get
That's
a
bad
productive one,
scouting by
not
the. That's
gets
bad. And
drafted.
Ojomo, we mentioned Carter taking the chance and making sure he stays on the straight now are so far so good. Calcaterra is developing. Saquon free agency grade. The pro people, Howie, obviously. Becton, I can't believe this one. And there's some guys we haven't mentioned now. The guys have to develop better. Nolan Smith has made marginal improvement, made a little bit of improvement. He's got to get better. Jordan Davis, he is what he is. Done playing nickel. Barely. I think maybe a couple snaps in nickel this season. It is what it is. He's a pretty good run stopper. I don't know what else to say about him. This is year three. He's got to be better.
All right, let's talk a little bit more just about that development. I just want to stop and pause and hear a word from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you stop into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam just sent you. Go in for the experience. They're great. The inventory is fantastic. You can check it out online at SkyMotorCars.com. Pick out a few things you like. Then go in, if you can, to Westchester, right off 202. Talk to Brett Schulter and his staff. I'm telling you, it is a great experience, which is rare these days in the car buying industry. So please go check them out. So Nolan Smith he did get a sack, right? Did he get a sack against
Yeah,
Washington?
and he started so
started?
on him, as we said a couple minutes ago. Nolan is gotten a little better,
Mm-hmm.
but he's just the knock on him was his win rate was not great in college. It was more of a if you study his tape, he had some flaws, right? But you like the kid, you like his football smarts, works hard, wants to be great, but you didn't know if he had it in him. And there were a lot of teams that gave him a second round grade because of that.
Mm-hmm.
You just didn't know if he's physically strong enough, didn't have the great pass rush moves that you need. He couldn't win with power. And as an edge rusher, you got to win with power sometimes. And that was the issue. Now he's playing with better discipline. That's good. Again, he did start. He played a lot of snaps. And as you mentioned earlier, it's really odd that Jalen Hunt actually played when the game sort of mattered against Dallas. He played in the first half quite a bit.
Yeah.
Like, where the hell is this coming from? Then all of a sudden, you don't play on defense, you only play on special. So I don't know.
I have to think that
know.
there's something matchup specific wise. Like Dallas was running a bare bones offense. They could barely throw the ball. They were going to run the ball up the middle. Washington, even though they struggled, they did again hit the running backs into the flat pretty well. I know that Vic likes to have his guys out there who can drop and rush like Nolan Smith. That makes sense. I have a feeling that was matchup specific versus Dallas compared to versus Washington.
I would think so. Yeah, that was my thinking because I'm like, what when you do something like that, unless Jalen Hunt's tape was so bad they couldn't put him on the field. I haven't heard that.
No, I don't think it was that.
Right,
It was just a good opportunity to get him some playing time against Dallas. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I just thought it was interesting that they put Hunt in the first half when the game was close.
Mm-hmm.
And he had some quality rushes, but then they just let him play on special. So we'll see what happens going forward. As you said, it could be a game-to-game thing. I just love, and I'm so glad you mentioned this, how Vic is not static. He's willing to change things up. The knock on him about playing younger players, you could throw that out the window. That he put that to sleep in August. He goes, whoever's playing well is playing.
Mm-hmm.
And remember when he said Quinion's got to play?
Yep.
And now he didn't say it because
he did. They'd be screwed if Quinion wasn't playing.
See, I don't want to criticize Ringo, but they're telling you that they didn't think Ringo was worth being a starter.
Yeah, listen, I think they like Ringo and Rodgers as backups. I don't think that they feel really confident with those guys starting 8 to 9 to 10 games in a row.
Although I'll tell you what, Rodgers has been solid. I know he's smaller. He's not going to get bigger than 5'10", but he can run. He's aggressive. He's physical. He's willing to mix it up. You like that as your backup corner. Again, the saying in coaching is, if our backup has to play 3 or 4 games, get us out of a tough spot, don't hurt our football team. I think Rodgers could probably hold down the fort if he had to.
Yeah, but big difference now between the level that Quinion and the physicality and the height and all that. Yeah, that's why I think he said
he's elite right now.
Yeah.
Quinion right now. I want to ask Greg. We haven't talked about Quinion enough with Greg. Someone asked in the YouTube comments. We'll leave you with this because Greg liked him, but maybe didn't love him. What he keeps all the scouting reports. He saves him, so we'll ask him. We'll definitely ask him this week for you.
Yeah, no, I feel like Joe Banner, who joined us on our Patreon, a great interview. Go patreon.com/inside the birch. Check it out because he touched on a variety of subjects. I feel like Joe Banner, and this is the typical nature of social media. Joe Banner tweeted like 6 weeks ago. He retweeted something about Quinion Mitchell being elite, and Joe Banner retweeted and said, "Well, that's not what executives feel or would say about Quinyon Mitchell, right? And this was, again, 5 or 6 weeks ago. Going into the bye, Quinyon was not playing at an elite level. We just talked about it. He struggled against Atlanta in that final drive, struggled against Tampa Bay. He wasn't playing up. He wasn't playing press coverage at all. And you and I and Greg talked about coming out of the college season into the draft. The reason why he went as the first corner in the draft, but at 22nd was because the league didn't see it as the strongest set of corners that you've seen in the last few years where you've seen other guys going top 10. It doesn't mean they couldn't be good. It's just that what they were, as Quinyon came out of college, he didn't do a lot of things that other corners that played at higher level do. So that was all true. What Joe was saying is that the league executive scouts, people who have scouted Quinyon, weren't sure that he was going to be elite, especially right away because of what he did not do at Toledo. But it's very convenient to now like retweet that 6 weeks later and be like, Joe, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're saying. No,
but he was
the book on
He's
him.
right. He's actually 100% right. Because by the way, that you and I exchanged notes for the draft, and we were talking about, because we knew the Eagles really liked him.
Yes.
We had no idea how high he would go. We thought we knew he'd be in the top 40. Would he go middle of the first round? We'll see. Didn't know.
Right.
And you said, you talk about where he went. The one thing we heard is like, man, can he play? Because he played off coverage only exclusively.
Right.
And 3 days of the Senior Bowl is not enough. And by the way, the physical play isn't really there at the Senior Bowl. It is in one-on-ones. You could see that. We've seen that for decades going there.
He had good ones against Roman Wilson. That was fun to watch. Yeah.
Yes, that was the one I remember.
Yeah.
You could see it, and you love the FBI, which is functional football intelligence. He had a very high. We heard great. That helps him. That helps you because when you're being asked to do something that you've not done before, and now you're being asked to do that, match, carry, deliver, play man coverage, sometimes play up. That's a lot to ask, man. And by the way, DeJean, before we get out of here, everything they're asking him to do. Remember, Christian Parker talked about this spring. They wanted to eventually not overload him and ask him to. They only want to ask him to play one position, but he's not playing typical nickel, man. He's not just a slot corner.
Right.
So things they're asking him to do. It's great coaching helps, man. I'm telling you that we don't talk about coaching enough. Joe Banner told me that when I first started working with him at ESPN. He goes, man, I don't think the media has any idea how important great coaching is.
I agree 100%.
It is important.
Absolutely. All right. Q&A Tuesday morning. We'll be back. What are we? Wednesday. We drop Wednesday. That'll be the early word on Eagles, Rams, and we'll get right back into it as the mini bye will be over and the Eagles will start preparing for a really big Sunday night game against the Rams. That's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds. Be sure to check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com and on Twitter at phlsportsnation.